Today, I'm going to be talking about staying productive in homemaking during seasons of life when it might be a little more difficult to do so. For me, right now, my due date, if you want to acknowledge a particular due date, is coming on. So I'm past 40 weeks pregnant, and as you will see, life does go on, even though I'm in a season of sort of in between and waiting.
My mom called me the other day and said that she had a free day this week and she asked if there was anything she could do just to help me before the baby arrived. And I said, yes. As a matter of fact, I know exactly what you can do. You can come pick up all of my children and take them for the day and do something fun, and I will get things done around the house. So that's what I'm doing today, just a general homemaking, housekeeping, going through, checking off the rest of the things on my list that I want to get done before the baby arrives. Not that the baby cares, because the baby doesn't care at all. And the more children I have, like the less I care, because I realize that. I realize the baby just doesn't care. But it's just nice to get things done, like especially deep cleaning tasks that I know probably won't get done over the spring and summer. You know this, if you live on a farm or a homestead and you've got a garden and all the things going on outside, like the house just is not the number one priority once that gets in full swing. Very usual sight in my kitchen. I've got a big pot of bone broth that I need to strain before I get going. And that's just part of prioritization. Like today, I have a whole day to do stuff. And I actually caught myself this morning, like getting way off of the list of practical items, thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll touch up paint and do this and do that. And I was thinking about all these things that don't actually need to be done. So I've learned over the years that prioritization is definitely a skill. And for me, when I think about prioritizing, like number one on that list is feeding people. People need to eat several times a day. So tending to the food, if I put that first, everything else does seem to flow a little more smoothly because I'm not worried about that all day. I'm not like in a rush. So I'm gonna see if there's anything I need to do around the kitchen, and then I will dive into the rest of my to-do list for the day.
The first thing that I want to talk about as far as being productive and homemaking in these seasons of life, whether it's postpartum or the beginning of pregnancy, maybe that's challenging for you, or the end of pregnancy, or illness, just whatever it is that is maybe out of the ordinary a little bit. It's accepting help. So, I think back 10 years when I was a newer mom, had two children. I was probably pregnant with my third 10 years ago. And I would not accept help until I was at my breaking point. Now, my life looked a lot different then. By the way, right now I'm just kind of doing some general kitchen prep. That's something I'd have to do every day. So, making a big pot of chicken soup just to have on hand. And I'm going to make some sourdough scones. So, those recipes will be linked for you guys. But I'm not going to talk you through the recipes. We're going to chat about homemaking and productivity. But, you know, when I was a younger mom, I would not accept help. My life did look different. I was working full time at a stressful nursing job, and I did need help, but I viewed it as a sign of weakness to accept help and definitely to ask for help. I would be at the point of tears, crying before I would call my mom or call somebody. And by that time I couldn't even really vocalize. My mom would pick up the phone. I'm here crying on the phone, and she'd say, "Well, what is it? What do you need?" And I couldn't even say what I needed. So she would come over, and I instantly felt better. By the way, speckled egg season is my favorite season. I love a good colorful egg and a nice speckled egg. But anyway, what I really needed was I needed to not be working two jobs. Like homemaking is a full-time job, and motherhood that comes along with that, and then working outside of the house. So I needed that. So that's something, think about that. If you're regularly dealing with stress and overwhelm, is it because you're working two full-time jobs? Because mothers aren't meant to do that. That's hard. That's a lot. It's too much. It's not fair to put that on one person. So there was that, but I couldn't identify that because I hadn't really been introduced to the idea that homemaking was a job. I kind of, I was born late 80s, grew up just hearing negative comments. And, I went to school, so it was just everywhere. This was not something I heard from my parents or anything. But just negative comments about stay at home moms and homemakers. Things like, oh, must be nice, or what does she do all day? The idea was that homemakers were lazy, probably unintelligent. And I know this sounds horrible because, like, I do this now with my life and I don't think these things, but I'm telling you what I grew up believing and what it took me years into motherhood to understand was not true. So, that, like I said, lazy, unintelligent, wasting their life, wasting their time, sitting around all day, doing basically nothing. These are horrible things, but this is what is taught, whether it might not be overt, but it's the subliminal message that girls get when you go all through 12 years of school, and being a wife and mother and homemaker is something that's never even discussed. When you talk about future life decisions and plans, it's the same for the boys and the girls. So the girls are told to climb the ladder and chase success at the cost of basically anything. Marriage, motherhood, and the home, that's never talked about. Right now, I'm making a white chocolate glaze for these scones. These are sourdough coconut scones. Quick recipe. It's a discard recipe, so it's like a 30-minute recipe. And I did do the white chocolate glaze. They're fabulous. And I'm just going to get some laundry going. I found some more cloth diapers I need to strip, so I'm going to get those going. But yeah, just staying productive. So anyway, I've learned a lot since then. I have learned that marriage, which, it is a sacrament, it's called holy matrimony. The word matrimony means the office of motherhood. It's an office. It is a job, a vocation, a full-time job. I've learned that, and I've learned to respect that. And I've learned that, it's okay to accept help whenever it is offered.
I do have a box of flats that were just more worn down and I didn't want to save for this time, so I'm saving these. They make great towels for cleaning, but I am actually just going to ask my husband if he wants these for shop towels. They always need shop towels because it's oily and greasy and very dirty down there, so they will get used. That's another reason I love flats. There are so many ways to use them.
I'm just bouncing in between tasks here. And, that's probably the second thing that I want to talk about is the work that is involved in homemaking. So here are my scones. A scone is basically like I'm learning an English biscuit, but they do not serve them in a savory manner. Scones are always sweet, if I'm understanding correctly. So for my English viewership, correct me if I'm wrong. But, we do scones over here. They're essentially just sweet biscuits, and my recipe is a modification of my sourdough biscuit recipe. So once again, that will be linked for you all. But let's get back to staying busy in homemaking. Another thing that I've learned is that the work of homemaking is a blessing. It's not a curse. It's not something to look at as, to dread, like, oh, I just need to get this done and then I'll finally be done. The work never ends. If you're a woman and you're running a household, you figured that out by now. The work of homemaking never ends. And ladies, that is a blessing. We read in scripture that women who are called to the path of the vocation of marriage, not every woman's called to that vocation of marriage, but for women who are called to that vocation, that is part of our sanctification and salvation route. Not saying that we can earn salvation by being a mother or anything like that, but we can stay faithful by doing the work of being a wife and mother. We've all heard the saying, idle hands are the devil's playthings. How true is that? I think back to a time in my life when I tried to avoid the work of homemaking and I resented it. I looked at it as, like I said, just something to get through, something just had to be done. I didn't really want to do it. And I kind of had this crazy mindset that one day I would just be finished with it. And I guess that's true If I would have just, done the modern American dream of like two children and done, race to get them out of the house, and then you don't have many homemaking tasks anymore. But I've realized that's not the calling of the Lord for those who are in the vocation of motherhood. And the work truly does keep us from things like idleness, frivolity, gossip, busybody activities around town. And these are not things I'm making up. If you know your scripture, you'll know where to find these. I'm not going to quote, but you know, here's another trick. If you ever hear somebody talking about scripture, you can just Google it. Just say, like, where is this in the Bible? So look up, where is it in the Bible that ladies should not be busybodies around town or engaging in frivolous, gossipy activities. So I've learned to enjoy the work, to appreciate the work of homemaking. By the way, you just saw one of my favorite toxic homemaking tools, which is Barkeeper's Friend. Here's another one, magic erasers. I mean, everyone knows magic erasers are like a must. So that was the end of my day of my mom having the kids. I just got some stuff done in the kitchen, got some stuff done around the house, and I actually ended up taking a nap that day. And that leads to point number 3 is, I think there can be a tendency when you do realize that homemaking is a job. It is a noble calling for women, a high calling, and there's much to be done. You can run yourself ragged and almost refuse to rest and like play the martyr. Don't do that. There's a time for rest. So the Lord's Day, that's a time for rest, but also seasons when you genuinely need it. Don't shy away from rest if you have the opportunity. It's a great thing. So there you can see one of my classic pregnancy snacks is just like a beef patty, dates, and a bowl of granola. I got to have my protein in there and got to get my dates in there. And now I'm going to move on. This is obviously, I'm wearing something different. We're moving on to a different day, doing more deep cleaning, staying productive as I wait for this sweet baby. I've got my nifty little steamer tool here that I'm using to clean windows. And really for me, this is not necessarily nesting as much as it is spring cleaning because it needs to be done. So, that's another thing. If you are going to surrender your fertility to the Lord and welcome many children, life moves on, no matter what season you're in. So my nesting just looks like doing the work of the season that it is. So right now it's not quite spring. Spring is right around the corner, a couple weeks away. So I'm just getting a jump start on things I would normally be doing, like cleaning car seats, which is a dreaded task. I never look forward to that, and I am always so clumsy at putting them back together. By the way, the one you saw, it's a Radian. That's my favorite car seat. I do use infant seats, but I really like the Radians. They're just really lightweight and slim. They don't take up a ton of room in your vehicle, and you can fit 3 in a row, even if you have a car. All right, let's move on to another day, because like I said, we're just spending some days together waiting for this baby. And this was a weekend, and I didn't have much going on, and I don't know who's more excited for the baby, me or my husband. He is so excited. Every morning he's like, so am I going to work today? And I have to tell him no, or yes, you're going. I'm sorry, no baby today. But on this day, we decided to have dinner with his parents, and I always ask him what are his requests, anytime we're having a big meal. What does he want me to make? And he said he wanted an apple pie, unless that was too much work. And I'm like, no, this is just what I need. I need a project for the day, something that I enjoy, which I enjoy being in the kitchen. That's another thing. Sometimes I'll get comments on my videos like, I hope you take time for yourself. I hope you rest. I'm like, this is my resting. This is my time for myself. I used to work a job that was very unfriendly, 12-hour shift, not counting your drive, not counting the overtime, not counting the horrible staffing situations and dangerous situations, and all I would dream about was being home and baking and doing stuff at home, just being home. I just dreamed of a day when that was possible. So this is my me time. This is very relaxing and therapeutic to me. I'm not a person who enjoys sitting too much unless it's to read a good book. I really love to read. So this day, I just, took my time in the kitchen making an apple pie. This is my sourdough pie crust. It's on my blog, so I'll link that for you guys. And I don't have an apple pie recipe, and I actually just was kind of enjoying the day and didn't really take good pictures. So I'll probably just put the apple filling recipe in the description for you guys. But, you can use the pie crust and then do whatever apple pie filling that you like. But, apple pie is a classic. So I'm just making a classic like double layer lattice apple pie here. Anyway, back to what we were talking about, staying busy, staying productive. That doesn't mean you have to just do the day-to-day tasks. Do things you enjoy. So if you find yourself, especially in a season like this, at the end of pregnancy, the baby's going to be here soon. It's just a matter of when, but you're past your so-called due date, which, gosh, I do not like due dates. Who made that up? A guy. A guy made it up. Look it up. And it's just so arbitrary. Like, yes, I know he used certain data to make it up, but, before the 40-week mark that everyone lives and dies by now, women were just fine. And the myth that women were dropping dead left and right in childbirth is a myth. That didn't happen until men who were just kind of general practitioners started managing childbirth. And what they would do is they did not believe in hand hygiene. So they would go from the morgue or from like changing a wound dressing on with an infectious disease, a really bad wound, and then they would go to a birth and be touching and checking and manipulating the mother and the baby. And this is what was causing childbirth fever, or I forget exactly what it was called, but the mortality rates just went through the roof. So back when childbirth was in the hands of skilled midwives, the mortality rate was very low. Yes, you would sometimes lose a mother who didn't have access to a C-section or something like that in a rare instance. And, for that technology that we have, I'm very grateful we have the technology to intervene in those rare cases today, but it's so overused. Anyway, but back then in simpler times, women just waited and they watched the moon. That's not some superstitious. There's a difference between astronomy and astrology. God did make the sun and the moon and the stars as signs for us to use. You're not, anti-Christian if you use the lights in the sky as signs to mark the seasons and the times of the year and all that. And a woman's seasons follow the moon. That's just how it is. So, as far as pregnancy and due dates and expecting baby, it's just something women would have just waited for. I'm not saying that they weren't anxious like we all are when we want to meet our sweet babies, and it seems to be going on longer than maybe some of the women around us, but there was another thing is, women had more work to do. So just like we've been talking in this video, they weren't sitting around waiting. That is one of the worst things you can do, is sit around and wait for your baby. So find something to do. Here I'm making a batch of my Nora tea. I'm keeping a lot of that prepped and ready because that's something that I will drink, all the way up until I have the baby and into my postpartum season as well. So I was having a big contraction here. I get Braxton Hicks pretty frequently, and you can see them. They are real. They're not just like a little something. Like, you can really see them, but I get them for the weeks, serious ones like that, like weeks leading up to the birth, so it doesn't mean too much to me. Anyways, back to eating my snack, my dates. My husband came in and he's, trying to get at the apple pie before it is time. So I told him, you must wait. The apple pie needs to cool. So we're about to wrap this video up here. Just me kind of talking, encouraging, hopefully offering some encouragement about homemaking, productivity, staying busy, the blessing of the work that is given to us as mothers, as wives, as women. It is a blessing. Never forget that. Pie turned out pretty good. And like I said, go look up, these things I mentioned that are in the Bible. If you're not sure where to find them, look it up, do some Googling, use the words that I used, and you'll find it. That's the best way to go about Bible searches, is to find it yourself and do some study. That pretty much wraps it up for this week's video. I already have next week's video filmed and scheduled, and we're going through my home birth supplies, all the things that are essential to me, my postpartum supplies, and just kind of chatting all about home birth, postpartum, and all of the birthy things. So if you're into that, then you will want to tune in next week. And very soon I will have an announcement for you when a sweet little baby makes his or her arrival.